Nah. My brother called it taking initiative. That was the phrase he used, taking initiative, when he told me over my own kitchen table in my own apartment that I had spent 4 years paying for, that he and his wife were going to stay a little longer than planned. "We're being proactive," he said, reaching across to steal a piece of my toast. "About our future." I nodded. I smiled. I refilled his coffee. 3 weeks later, I called my realtor, but I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Phoebe. I'm 32 years old, and I'm a UX designer who works remotely for a firm based in Seattle. I have never lived in Seattle. I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment on the 4th floor of a converted brick building in Columbus, Ohio. The building used to be a textile factory. You can still see the original iron beams in the ceiling if you look up. I always looked up. I bought the apartment at 28, which everyone told me was either very smart or very stupid, depending on who you asked. My mother said it was reckless. My father said nothing, which was his way of agreeing with my mother. My brother Owen said, "Nice, Phoebes," and then immediately asked if he could crash there when he came to visit. Owen is 35. He married his college girlfriend Renata 6 years ago in a ceremony that I helped pay for, though my parents will tell you it was a loan, and I will tell you I've never seen a cent of it. They lived in Phoenix, where Owen worked in sales for a medical equipment company, and Renata taught spin classes and managed their joint Instagram account called Fit and Found Together, which had 4,000 followers and had once been featured in a local lifestyle blog. They had been happy as far as I could tell. Then Owen's company folded. Then Renata's studio closed. Then they called me in February to say they were driving to Columbus because they just needed a reset. "Just for a month," Renata said on speakerphone. Her voice was smooth and practiced. She had the cadence of someone who had spent a lot of time filming herself. "We just need to regroup, figure out our next move. You have that second bedroom." I did have that second bedroom. I had converted it into my home office over the course of 2 years, standing desk, dual monitors, a proper ergonomic chair, good lighting so my face didn't look like a ghost on video calls. My entire job happened in that room. Every client presentation, every sprint review, every salary negotiation I'd ever won. That room was the reason I could afford the apartment at all. "Of course," I said. "Come stay." I put my work setup in the living room, temporarily. That was February. By April, the word temporarily had quietly left the building. Owen had set up a podcast in my office. Not a professional podcast, a potential podcast, he explained, which meant he had bought a microphone on my Amazon account and had spent 3 weeks researching equipment and had so far recorded 0 episodes. Renata had arranged her resistance bands and foam rollers on my bedroom floor because the second bedroom didn't have enough natural light for her online fitness content. My natural light, my floor. I was paying the mortgage, the HOA fees, the utilities. I had quietly added them to my grocery order because Renata kept forgetting to buy basics and then looking pained when I mentioned it. The electric bill had gone up 40% because they kept the heat at 76 degrees and ran the dishwasher half full. Owen had given my parking spot to a neighbor he'd befriended temporarily because the neighbor had a bad knee, and Owen's car was now parked in the fire lane most mornings. My parents were thrilled that we were all being family. My mother called every Sunday to tell me how proud she was of me for helping my brother through a hard time. My father forwarded me an article once about sibling bonds and the importance of sacrifice. I never responded to the article. I just marked it as read. The breaking point arrived on a Thursday in May. I had a major presentation, a full product redesign pitch for a client worth a significant chunk of my annual income. I had been preparing for 2 weeks. The meeting was at 9 in the morning, which meant I needed to be at my desk, in a quiet space, camera on, brain sharp. At 8:50, Owen started the blender. Not a quick smoothie. A full, extended, catastrophically loud blending session that lasted 4 minutes and produced what appeared to be a green liquid the color of a swamp. The blender was on the kitchen counter, directly on the other side of the wall, from where I was sitting with my laptop open and my heart rate at about 140. I muted myself and typed in the chat, "Technical issues on my end. 1 moment." Then I walked to the kitchen, held up 5 fingers to Owen, and pointed at my laptop with my eyes doing the thing that I hoped communicated the full weight of the situation. He gave me a thumbs up and kept blending. I did the presentation with a slight hum audible in the background. The client asked twice if I was in a cafe. I said yes. I am not proud of this. I passed the pitch. Barely. That evening, I sat at my desk in the living room next to the couch beside the throw pillow that Renata had bought for the aesthetic, and I looked at the numbers in my bank account. Then I looked at the property tax notice I had opened that morning. Then I pulled up my Zillow app and looked at what my apartment was currently worth. It had gone up significantly since I bought it. I texted my realtor friend Cora. Just a question, I said. Hypothetically, what would I get if I sold? She called me back in 11 minutes. By 9 p.m., I had a number in my head. By 10 p.m., I had a plan. Not a dramatic one, not a revenge fantasy, just a plan, quiet, efficient, surgical, the same way I approached every project at work. I did not tell Owen. I did not tell Renata. I did not tell my parents. I simply started. Over the next 2 weeks, I had Cora come by when Owen and Renata were at the gym. She walked through the apartment and confirmed what I already knew. Good bones, great light, prime location, priced well even in the current market. We set a number. We agreed on a timeline. I signed the listing paperwork on a Tuesday morning while Owen was recording a test episode of his podcast in what used to be my office. The apartment went live on Thursday. Cora had a showing scheduled by Friday afternoon. The showing was while they were out. I had suggested a coffee shop I knew they liked, told Owen I'd seen someone mention it in a local Facebook group, that apparently the cold brew was exceptional. He was very enthusiastic about this. Renata filmed a reel about it. The buyers were a young couple, late 20s, recently married. She was a nurse. He was finishing a master's in environmental engineering. They walked through and stayed 40 minutes. I watched from the hallway outside my own apartment because Cora said it was better for sellers not to hover. They made an offer that weekend, above asking. I accepted on Monday. The closing date was set for 6 weeks out. I had already found my new place, a 1-bedroom with a dedicated office alcove in a building downtown, 13 floors up, with a rooftop terrace and a very strict guest policy that I intended to enforce with great personal satisfaction. Here's where I want to be honest about how I felt. I did not feel guilty. I want to be clear about that because I know someone reading this will expect me to say I felt terrible, that I agonized, that I almost called it off. I didn't. I felt the way you feel when you've been holding your breath underwater and you finally kick to the surface and take a full lungful of air. I felt like myself again. I also felt the practical weight of what had to happen next. I had to tell them. I chose a Sunday. I made coffee. The 3 of us were in the kitchen. Owen eating cereal, Renata scrolling through her phone, me standing by the counter with my mug, which I held with both hands because I didn't trust what my hands might do otherwise. I need to tell you both something, I said. Owen looked up. Renata kept scrolling. I've sold the apartment. Owen put his spoon down. Renata's thumb stopped. What? Owen said. I've accepted an offer. Closing is in 6 weeks, which means you sold it, he repeated. Yes, our apartment. There it was, our apartment. I had been waiting for that word, and I had still somehow not been fully prepared for the smallness of it. My apartment, I said, keeping my voice even, that I bought, with my savings, and have been paying for. Renata set her phone face down on the table. This was, in my experience, a signal of incoming performance. Phoebe, she said in the voice she used when she wanted to sound reasonable and generous simultaneously. We are family. We came here because you invited us, and now you're just what? Pulling the rug? I gave you a month, I said. It's been 4. We've been going through something, Owen said. He had that look on his face, the one he'd had since we were kids, the combination of wounded and righteous that had gotten him out of every consequence he'd ever faced. Our whole lives collapsed. You know what that feels like? I know what it feels like to set up my office in my living room, I said. I know what it feels like to do a client presentation while someone makes a smoothie at 9 in the morning. I know what it feels like to pay for everything in my own apartment while I eat dinner on my own couch next to a throw pillow I didn't buy. Silence. I didn't know it was that bad, Owen said, quieter now. I didn't say anything, I said. That's on me. but I'm saying it now. 6 weeks. I'll help you look for a place if you want, but the apartment is sold." Renata stood up. She picked up her phone and left the room without another word. A minute later, I heard the door to my office, her studio, close firmly. Owen stared at his cereal. "Where are we supposed to go?" "That's the question I've been waiting for you to ask," I said, not unkindly. "You've been here 4 months. What's the plan been?" He didn't answer. I finished my coffee and went to sit on the balcony. My parents called that evening. Both of them, which meant Renata or Owen, had called them first, which I had anticipated. My mother led with, "How could you do this to your brother?" My father said nothing on the phone. I could hear him breathing. "I sold my apartment, Mom," I said. "I'm allowed to sell my apartment. He is family, Phoebe. You don't do this to family." "What exactly did I do?" I asked. I was genuinely curious what the answer would be. "You blindsided them. You made them feel unwanted. They are guests," I said, "in the home I own. They've been guests for 4 months, and in 4 months, the plan for their own lives has not changed at all. I can't wait indefinitely." "Indefinitely? It hasn't been that long." "Mom, I sleep with my work laptop on the nightstand because my office has a podcast set up in it that has produced 0 episodes. I paid for their groceries last month. I am subsidizing their life. And when I sell my apartment, I'm not doing anything to them. I'm doing something for me." My mother went quiet. Then, "What will you tell people?" That was the moment I understood fully what this conversation was actually about. "I'll tell them the truth," I said. "I sold my apartment because I wanted to." We didn't speak for almost 2 weeks after that. The 6 weeks moved with the quiet efficiency of a closing process that I had controlled entirely. I found Owen a lead on a sublet, a 1-bedroom in a perfectly decent neighborhood, month to month, available immediately. I sent it without commentary. He took it without thanking me, which felt appropriate somehow. Renata found a part-time coaching job at a new gym. I know because she posted about it. The movers came on a Wednesday. I had packed my own boxes over 3 weekends, careful and methodical, room by room. There was something satisfying about it. Reclaiming space as I went, feeling the square footage return to me incrementally. The standing desk came apart cleanly. The monitors went into their original boxes, which I had kept in the storage unit downstairs because I am that kind of person. Owen and Renata had already gone. I had not watched them leave. By the time I returned from dropping off the first fan load at my new place, their things were out and the rooms were empty and strange-looking, the way rooms get when the furniture leaves and you see all the scuffs and the nail holes and the life that happened there. I swept every room, left the keys with the building manager for the new owners, sent Cora a bottle of wine. Then I drove to my new building, took the elevator to the 13th floor, and stood at the window. The city looked the same from up here. A little more of it visible, but the same city. My phone had been going off for 3 days. My mother, my father, twice, which was twice more than usual, an aunt who I had not heard from in 2 years and who had clearly been briefed. One message from Renata that said, "I really hope you're happy," in a tone that was designed to communicate the opposite. I let them all sit in my notification tray while I assembled my desk. The reconciliation, if you want to call it that, happened about 6 weeks later, not at anyone's house. I chose a restaurant, a good one, not punishingly expensive but nicer than a diner, the kind of place with cloth napkins and enough ambient noise that no one could make a scene without embarrassment. I had picked it deliberately. My parents looked older. My mother's posture had the stiffness of someone who had prepared remarks. My father was studying the breadbasket with great focus. Owen came alone. I had not expected that. He sat down and looked at me for a long moment before he said anything. "I talked to Renata," he said. "She agrees that we let it go too long." I waited. "I'm sorry," he said. "I think I stopped seeing you as a person and started seeing you as the backup plan. And that's," he shook his head, "that wasn't right. I had not expected that either. I had prepared for defensiveness, for the wounded righteous look, for my mother's version of events. I had not prepared for a real sentence." "Thank you," I said. My mother opened her mouth. I held up one finger. Gently, not aggressively. "Can I say something first?" I asked. She closed her mouth. I love this family, I said. I do, but I spent 4 months, and honestly, longer than that, if I'm being truthful, being the person who absorbed everyone's problems without being asked if I had the capacity. The apartment thing was the most visible version of it, but it wasn't the only version. I covered the wedding. I cover things I don't even track anymore because I stopped expecting to be paid back. I'm not saying that to run up a debt. I'm saying it because I need you to understand that the reason I didn't ask them to leave, the reason I started the sale process before saying a word, is because I had learned from experience that the moment I said this isn't working for me, I would become the selfish one. And I'm tired of that being the only option. The table was quiet. My father set down his bread. "That's fair," he said. It was 4 words. From him, it was a lot. My mother did not agree out loud, but she reached over and put her hand on mine. Briefly, and I decided to accept that as the version of acknowledgement she was capable of giving right now. We ate dinner. We talked about neutral things. Owen told a story about a disaster with the sublet's water heater that was genuinely funny, and I let myself laugh at it. The relationship is not the same as it was. I'm not sure I want it to be. The version that existed before had me playing a role I had never auditioned for and never been paid to perform. This version, the one where I had my own space, my own walls, my office with the door that locked, felt more honest. Less comfortable, maybe. More mine. The new apartment is quiet in a way that hits you when you're not expecting it. Not the absence of sound kind of quiet, but the kind that comes from knowing every object in the room is there because you put it there. The throw pillows on my couch are the ones I chose. The coffee in the cabinet is the kind I like. The thermostat is set to 68 degrees. I sit at my desk now, in my office, behind my door, in my building, and I think sometimes about the phrase Owen used, taking initiative. He meant it as a defense. He meant it as a justification for showing up and making himself at home in someone else's life. I didn't correct him at the time, but I know what taking initiative actually looks like. It looks like signing the listing agreement on a Tuesday morning. It looks like choosing the restaurant with cloth napkins. It looks like 13 floors and a view you don't have to share with anyone who hasn't earned it. I opened my laptop. The spreadsheet on my screen was clean, organized, green across the board. I made myself a cup of coffee. Good coffee, the kind I'd been buying since I moved out of my parents' house at 22 and told myself I would always buy the good kind because I'd worked for it and I was allowed to have things that were good. The city spread out past my window. The building's rooftop terrace was just above me. I had been up there twice, both times alone. It was enough. It was exactly enough. Some people will read this and say I was too harsh. That family is complicated, that my brother was struggling, that I should have had more grace. I've had those conversations in my head. I've given grace its full argument. And then I've thought about the blender, about the word hour, about the article my father forwarded that I never answered. You can love your family completely and still understand that love is not a lease agreement. It does not entitle anyone to your square footage, your income, or your quiet. It does not mean you owe someone a home when they arrive without a plan and stay without a deadline. I am not the backup plan. I was never supposed to be. I'm just the daughter who finally, at 32 years old, stopped pretending that the fire I was keeping everyone else warm with wasn't burning my own hands. I've thought a lot about the word initiative since all of this happened. Owen used it like a shield, like showing up at my door with 3 suitcases and no plan was somehow a bold, forward-thinking move. And for a long time, too long, I let that framing stand because it was easier than naming what it actually was. That's the thing nobody tells you about being the capable one in a family. The more reliably you show up, the more invisible your effort becomes. It stops being seen as something you're choosing to give and starts being treated as something that simply exists, like a utility. Owen didn't move into my apartment because he was malicious. He moved in because, on some level, he genuinely didn't believe it would cost me anything. I had always absorbed the cost before. Why would this be different? That's not cruelty. That's the result of years of me never letting the cost show. I'm not proud of that pattern. I built it myself, one covered expense and one swallowed complaint at a time, and then I was surprised when people walked comfortably across the floor I'd laid for them. The lesson I keep coming back to isn't about Owen or Renata or even my parents. It's about what happens when you consistently act as though your limits don't exist. Eventually, other people believe you. Selling the apartment wasn't revenge. I want to be honest about that. It was the first time in years that I made a decision based entirely on what I needed, without running it through the filter of what everyone else would think or feel or say at Sunday dinner. And the fact that it looked dramatic from the outside, the fact that my aunt texted me, that my mother cried, that Renata posted something vague and pointed on her Instagram, none of that changed what it actually was, which was just a woman selling her own property. The courage it took wasn't the big kind. It wasn't standing on a table and making a speech. It was quieter than that. It was signing a document on a Tuesday. It was not calling to warn them first. It was trusting that I had thought it through carefully enough that I didn't need anyone's permission or validation to follow through. Intelligence without the willingness to act on it is just a very sophisticated way of staying stuck. I had known for months that the situation wasn't sustainable. I had the numbers. I had the analysis. What I didn't have, until I did, was the nerve to let the answer be what it was. What I carry from all of this isn't bitterness. It's something closer to clarity. My brother and I still talk. My parents and I still have dinner. The relationship survived imperfectly and honestly, which is the only way relationships worth keeping do survive. Owen apologized and I believed him, and I also understood that the apology and the pattern that made the apology necessary can both be true at the same time. You can love people completely and still recognize that love doesn't come with a deed to your home. It doesn't come with access to your bank account or your square footage or your silence. The most ethical thing I know how to do is to be honest about what I have to give, and equally honest about where that ends. That line isn't selfishness. That line is how I make sure there's still something left of me worth showing up to the table with. 13 floors up, the city looks the same as it always did. I'm the one who's different.